Join us at Women of Courage and celebrate the achievements of women.
At what point did you think this was gonna be easy? At what point did you think this was gonna be handed to you? This is life. Every moment, every second, as precious as the next. I don't care if you've lost. I don't care if you failed. I don't care if you've hit bottom. As long as that hunger still lies inside, as long as that light still flickers, you fight. We fight for the people that believe in us. We fight for the moments, we fight for the seconds. We fight for the pride, we fight for the dreams. We fight. We always fight.
Good afternoon. This is Gloria Lee. I have taken it upon myself to provide you with information of why you should vote in November on the 3rd. Please listen carefully from all of these people who are discussing the status of the United States now under the control of President Trump.
Steve Schmidt, I was talking earlier to your newly joined colleague, Michael Steele, about the ad that was put out very quickly after Kamala Harris was named, and the line that struck me about this is the America of our better angels, and contrast that with the fact that it didn't take long for Donald Trump or any member of Team Trump to turn this very, very personal, Steve.
Oh, for sure. Listen, this will be the most disgusting political campaign in American history. Donald Trump won't just physically, Donald Trump just won't assault verbally Kamala Harris and Vice President Biden and do all the things he does. But he's a constitutional vandal. He's a political arsonist. He'll burn everything down in order to try to win the presidency for a second time. And look, you have a 231-year tradition in this country of elections conducted with integrity. We have a president who is consistently undermining the integrity of the election, saying and intimating that if he loses, it will be because he was cheated. And explicitly, look at the messaging. I mean, Donald Trump is saying suburban housewives. And by suburban housewives, it's that he has this caricature in his head of women from the 1950s. I don't know if he was up eating cheeseburgers, watching the Stepford Wives over the weekend on late night cable or what have you. But this notion of what's coming to harm the pure, gentle housewife of suburbia, this big, dangerous black person, low-income housing, it's so overtly filled with racial animus that it just beggars the imagination. It's all out of the bottle, right? What we're seeing here is what it would look like if George Wallace was the president and he was running for re-election. You have a House candidate who won a primary last night who's one of these QAnon conspiracy nuts. President of the United States was on the phone congratulating her. And so you see the attacks coming from the Republicans about extremism. But when you look at the Trump administration, all you see is extremism wherever you look, from crazy Pastor Paula, the White House faith outreach director, and her outlandish and bizarro statements, from Jerry Falwell Jr. Everywhere you look around Trump, you see extremism. You see a shattering of norms and traditions. You see vile attacks, untrue attacks, nonstop, constant lying. So we do know that Kamala Harris is tough enough for this. She ran a really great first-time presidential campaign. She played a major role in the presidential primary contest. Now she's the vice president. She's part of a team that's going to have to lead a recovery in this country that's every bit as complex and challenging as the issues that FDR was dealing with, as complex and challenging as the issues that Lincoln was dealing with. It is an hour of American crisis at the highest level. We've not been in this situation but a few times in our history, and it's going to take acts of tremendous leadership to move us out of it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
Good morning, everyone. Benjamin Dixon with some breaking news here for the Young Turks. I'll give everyone a few minutes to come into the room. It's kind of a major deal with Donald Trump basically wholeheartedly admitting his agenda with regards to sabotaging the United States Postal Service. CNN, as well as Fox News, they're breaking this news now that Donald Trump is saying clearly, according to Abby Phillips on CNN, she said on Twitter, Trump is clearly on Fox stating why he won't fund the USPS. Now, they need that money in order to make the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. But if they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in ballots. So he's making it clear for the first time, even though we've known this, right? We've known this for quite some time, that this is exactly why Donald Trump is sabotaging the Postal Service. It's interesting to hear him say it with his own words. And this is something that the Republican Party obviously should oppose, but I have a feeling we're not going to hear them oppose this at all whatsoever because they have a vested interest in Donald Trump's reelection, even if that means that they have to sacrifice, that they're willing to sacrifice the post office as well as burn this country to the ground. It's not only Donald Trump's reelection that they're interested in keeping, they're also interested in breaking up the post office in the first place. Any type of public good, any type of public service, we've seen for quite some time that the Republicans have been willing to destroy it. They get in office in order to break it apart, to make government inefficient. One of the reasons they always say and complain about the government being inefficient is because they get into office and they do everything they can to make it inefficient. Just like the current Postmaster General, he is there sabotaging the post office even as we speak. And so this is surprising that he is so ignorant that he would admit it, but this is where we are in 2020, that even though he admitted it very clearly, we're very likely not to have a single Republican come out against this, and they will stand by and watch him break it up. And again, in breaking it up, this provides an opportunity for them to say, look, see, this is how the post office has failed. And now this gives us an excuse to privatize the post office. And this is the agenda of the Republican Party for so long. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how far they're willing to go in order to, what all are they willing to destroy in order to get this privatized agenda across. It's going to be interesting to see exactly what component of the government are they willing to not just burn down to the ground for the sakes of getting some type of privatized profit off of it. But it's also interesting to see how far they're willing to go to allow Donald Trump, or how many instances will they allow Donald Trump to just state the strategy so plainly and so clearly. It's fascinating. It's fascinating that the Republican Party will stand by. And also, I'm interested in seeing what the Democrats are going to do about this, right? I can lay all this at the Republican Party as much as I want, but the real question is, what are Democrats going to do about this to stop this? Because this is Donald Trump. It's not a sure thing that Donald Trump is going to lose in 2020. Right? Even if there is no shenanigans, right? The recent polling from Harris and Hill X showed that 50% of white Americans said that they would vote for Donald Trump right now today. So it's not a sure thing that Donald Trump is going to lose, even if he doesn't sabotage the post office. But if he does sabotage the post office, it's a high likelihood that he would win. And then we saw last week, one last detail, we saw last week that Donald Trump has no problem with the hypocrisy of supporting mail-in ballots for the state of Florida. And he stated very clearly why he supports mail-in ballots for the state of Florida, because they had a Republican governor previously and they currently have a Republican governor now. And as you all remember, if you're around in 2000, the state of Florida was able to go through their machinations to ensure a Republican won the White House. So there's no problem with the hypocrisy in their minds. They're totally willing to engage in the hypocrisy even more. So this is breaking news. Again, Donald Trump admitting very clearly on Fox News why he is not going to fund the post office. And this is what he said again. He said now, hang on, I just lost my tweet that quickly. He said that now they need that money in order to make the post office work. But so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. But if they don't get those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in ballots. So Donald Trump admitting very clearly his entire agenda. And the real question is what are Republicans going to do about it, which I believe is nothing. And then what are Democrats going to do about it? Well, it remains to be seen. All right, this is Benjamin Dixon with breaking news for TYT.
My name is Paula. I currently live in North Carolina. I've recently retired as a circuit court judge, and I served in Kentucky. I did not support Trump in 2016, although I have supported every Republican presidential candidate that I can remember since Ronald Reagan. A lot of those candidates were flawed, but I certainly could always find something to admire in them. In the course of this presidency, I have found absolutely nothing that I can say I truly admire about this president. I cannot support a president that I can't believe. I think he lies about things that are big and things that are small. And to me, that's more indicative of a character flaw or a serious psychological issue than it is of something who's simply afraid to acknowledge the truth of a situation. I've worked with children almost all my life. I was a teacher. I went to law school later in life. I've represented children as an attorney. I was a family court judge for 13 years. I am certainly not for open borders. I am certainly for the rule of law. I support laws. I support strong immigration policies. However, I think the treatment of immigrant children under the Trump administration will be a stain on our country forever. I think these children will be traumatized to an extent that's probably impossible to be corrected. And it is embarrassing to me that our country treated little children in such an inhumane way. After I retired, my husband and I traveled quite a bit. People felt sorry for us. We were the Americans to be pitied. They ridicule our president. We can do better, but we simply can't tolerate a president who shows such an incredible lack of integrity and someone that we just can't be proud of.
Kanye West's presidential bid, if you can call it that, has already run afoul of the law in several states where it appears that his signatures for his to get his name on the ballot are identical. So there's already an investigation going to see if he broke the law with that. But now there might be a new investigation, as it was recently revealed that Kanye West was seen meeting with Jared Kushner, the unofficial, I guess you'd call him chief of the Trump re-election campaign. The two were recently spotted together in Colorado. While Kushner was there on other business, West was there. They were together, chatting it up. And as George Conway from the Lincoln Project pointed out, if there is any kind of, let's call it collusion between these two campaigns. Whether Kanye is actually serious about his campaign or not, it does in fact exist. So if there is any collusion, if there is any coordination of any kind between these two groups, it is 100% illegal. It is a violation of federal elections law. One campaign cannot conspire with another. I know that seems weird, but that's a federal law. You can't work with this other campaign. And the reason they do that is so you don't have a situation like we have with Kanye, a situation that he's actually admitted to, which is that he is launching this campaign in order to siphon African American votes away from the Democrats so that Trump can be reelected. Kanye has no actual intention of becoming president or launching a serious campaign. He just wants to get enough black voters away from Biden so that Trump has no problem winning election. So far, polls show that's not happening at all. Like, everybody sees through Kanye's little act. And maybe that's why he was meeting with Jared Kushner. Maybe the two were meeting to say, hey, this thing isn't working the way we thought it would. Where do we go from here? We already know, by the way, that Kanye West has been using Trump advisors in some states across the country, including Wisconsin. So the campaigns are apparently already sharing the same advisors. This is a criminal enterprise at this point. That is the only way to describe it, because of what they are doing and the fact that it is 100% illegal. And that's the thing that gets me about this administration, is that they just don't care anymore. They don't care. I'm also willing to bet they 100% don't know. Jared Kushner is not a smart person. He simply is not. He doesn't know what he's doing. But that is no excuse for breaking the law. And even if he does know what he is doing, he relishes in it. I mean, they get off on this. They have some sick sexual fetish, I think, when it comes to breaking the law. And I think we're seeing that play out right now, and it's very disgusting to watch. But it is apparent at this point that there is some kind of coordination between these two campaigns. If this coordination does in fact exist, if Donald Trump is encouraging Kanye to run, if there have been discussions between these two groups about the goal of Kanye's campaign, which he has stated, again, is to siphon black votes away from Democrats, if the Trump campaign has encouraged this in any way, if they have offered any help, if they have agreed to anything in exchange in return or anything at all like that, then yes, both of these campaigns will be in violation of federal law. And as such, the people involved should go to jail. Simple as that. This Trump administration and the Trump campaign, both from 2016 and 2020, appear to be little more than criminal enterprises. And it's time that we put as much effort into busting these guys as they do into busting small town drug dealers selling a half ounce of pot. We got real criminals in this country, and they're laughing at the laws. We can put an end to that because we see what's happening. We can tell that they're breaking the law. We just need somebody, maybe a body of Congress, I don't know, somebody with a little bit of courage to stand up to this administration and put an end to it by throwing every one of them involved in jail.
Hi, my name is Dan Ardell. I'm a California Republican. I have been a Republican since I first voted in 1964 for Barry Goldwater. So that's kind of the starting point. What I really wonder is what happened to compassionate conservatism that we were starting to put together until some things came together, including Trump. But what I like to talk about a little bit is his narcissism, which I believe drives virtually every of his decisions. Also, in that, obviously, he needs constant stroking. He needs someone to tell him how great he is. He needs to have a large stage. And interestingly, he's a professed conservative. I don't believe that he is either conservative or not conservative. He's going to do what benefits him or what he believes will benefit him. Family and Christian values. What a joke. This guy has Trump values, Christian values. He's the least Christian president we've maybe ever had. I don't know. And he certainly is not a God-fearing individual. He is going to do what makes sense for him. Family issues, again, look at his family and you tell me how his family issues are any different than most of us. Draining the swamp. He did it. And then he refilled it with his own people, many of whom are in jail or will be in jail. Freedom of religion. Again, it's a joke. Freedom of a Christian religion. I'm a Christian. I'm an elder in my church. I do not believe what he believes as it relates to Jesus. I don't believe what he believes in relation to many of his Christian values. Respect for others does not exist. Foreign policy hardly exists. Again, back to those basics. So that's the whole story in just a nutshell.
I am going to pause for a second to take a short break while you listen to information regarding willpower and encouragement. It is all a matter of learning new behaviors. And please remember, it is easier to build strong minds than to repair injured people. What I said is a modification of a quote by Frederick Douglass. He said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Now, the Michigan primaries and the general election are coming up, so we thought we should say something about why you should vote. Elizabeth Wallis from the League of Women Voters in Texas says here are some reasons why you should vote. She says if nobody votes, it's not a democracy. If you don't vote, people will not take you seriously. Voting is how you define yourself as part of something larger than yourself. Number 4, if you do not vote, someone else will make the decisions for you. Voting is part of your independence. Number 5, it matters. It matters to the future of you, your family, and your community. 6, people who don't vote are letting down their families and their communities. Moms, do you have an 18-year-old in your family? If so, give him or her register and be certain they vote. 8, refusing to vote isn't a rebellion, it's a surrender. Number 9, love your country. Prove it by voting. Number 10, voting is the great equalizer. The richest billionaire in America gets just one vote, the same as you and me. Number 11, what do the smart people do? They vote. They are voters. Number 12, elections have consequences. Be a voter. Elected officials make all the big decisions, and they listen to the people who vote. Number 14, if you don't vote, you're invisible to the elected officials who make all the big decisions. Number 15, did you know people with money spend billions of dollars on elections? Billions spent for television ads, mailers, people to make phone calls and to knock on doors. The smart people spending all that money are trying to influence the voters. If it didn't matter, they wouldn't do it. Number 16, if you don't vote because you think your vote doesn't matter, then the people who don't want you to vote because you are afraid of how your vote will not win. Number 17, bad people are elected by the good people who did not vote. Hundreds of thousands of Americans have died to protect your right to vote. You owe it to them to vote. 19, voting is the right thing to do. Start preparing to vote now. Go and register at the Secretary of State's office. Find out where your polling place is and be prepared to be the first person in line to vote that day. If you do not have transportation to the polling place, call your local library and find out who is offering free transportation to polling locations. Remember, vote.
You need to live life with a purpose. You need to spend the time needed to explore, to find your true passion. There are so many unhappy people in this world not willing to make a change. There are so many unhappy people not focusing on the big picture. 1 out of 3 people are happy with their lives. Think about that for a second. 70% of the people you see every day are not happy. And the majority of that has to do with purpose. People are programmed, wired to be okay with the minimum. People stay in jobs they're not passionate about. They date people who don't support them, hang out with people who don't help them grow. This can't be you. You need to spend the time to discover what your true calling is. What are you passionate about? What do you see yourself doing to make your mark? Are you in a job right now that you're truly happy with? Do you wake up every morning excited to start your day? If not, that's okay. You know now this isn't fulfilling you. But what are you gonna do about it? Are you willing to make a change to help reach your goals? If you are, it needs to start now. Because this won't happen overnight, finding your true calling. But once you do, you will see how everything changes. You will begin to see the quality of your life increase. All those problems you had, they slowly fade. You begin to see how powerful life is with a purpose.
Why you need to go register and vote. The presidential election will soon be here, and I have encountered several people who have said they are not going to vote in this election because none of the candidates are honorable or scripturally correct. While these qualities are highly desirable in candidates, we live in an age where few people involved in politics can claim any of these traits. My answer to these people is as follows. As a member of this society, you need to get out and vote. Your vote counts. It is our right to stand up against wrong in any way we can. Our government is a republic in which we are given the responsibility to vote for people to represent us. As a believer in the rule of law, we have to stand up against evil in any way we can. So we need to ask ourselves, are we for the constitutional qualities that honor the rule of law, or are we against it? If so, then you need to vote. Why complain? Vote. President Hussein Barack Obama tweeted to all of us that we all should vote. In November, it will be in your hands. Vote.
Please go ahead.
Mr. President, I have 2 questions. The first one on domestic politics. There are claims.
Can't understand a word
There are
you're
claims
saying.
circulating in social media that Kamala Harris is not eligible to run for vice president because she was an anchor baby, I quote. Do you or can you definitively say whether or not Kamala Harris is eligible, meets the legal requirements to run as vice president?
So I just heard that. I heard it today that she doesn't meet the requirements. And by the way, the lawyer that wrote that piece is a very highly qualified, very talented lawyer. I have no idea if that's right. I would have assumed the Democrats would have checked that out before she gets chosen to run for vice president. But that's a very serious. You're saying that they're saying that she doesn't qualify because she wasn't born in this country.
No, she was born in this country, but her parents did not. The claims say that her parents did not receive their permanent residence at that time.
Yeah, I don't know about it. I just heard about it. I'll take a look.
Well, it took all of 2 days of having a black nominee for vice president on the Democratic ticket before Trump began testing the waters of birtherism. This question and answer are in reference to an article written in Newsweek questioning Kamala Harris's eligibility to serve as vice president. The article is nothing more than racist birtherism cloaked in pseudo-legalese. It's the same thinly veiled bigotry that has completely enveloped the Republican Party. And so, of course, Trump is promoting it. Because lest you forget, Trump's entire political career was born out of attacking a black man. Here's the thing, if Trump had even a shred of decency, he would have simply said, of course she's eligible to run for vice president. But I really wouldn't hold your breath expecting decency from Donald Trump. And so instead, what Trump did was just compliment the person who wrote the baseless article by calling him, quote, very highly qualified and talented, thereby lending credence to what amounts to nothing more than birtherism 2.0. And what's worse, he then took it a step further, floating the idea that Kamala wasn't even born in the US. So that we're unequivocally clear, she was born in California. So that's it, period. I know that Trump wants to dabble in birtherism because he's an unapologetic racist, but just a newsflash for Republicans, being black doesn't mean you're not American. Keep in mind, Trump employed the same racist birther attacks against Obama, creating the conspiracy theory that he wasn't born in the United States, to the point where Obama opted to release his birth certificate just to shut them up. Trump is the same guy who would then go on to suggest that 4 non-white congresswomen, members of the squad, should, quote, go back to their countries. It's also important to note that their countries were the United States, as 3 of them were born in the US and the 4th, Ilhan Omar, emigrated to the United States when she was 10. But again, the racism is the point. But it's not just racism at work here with regard to Kamala Harris. Trump also gets to employ some misogyny while he's at it too. Just yesterday, Trump began calling her nasty, one of his favorite insults to levy at women.
So I was a little surprised that he picked her. I've been watching her for a long time, and I was a little surprised. She was extraordinarily nasty to Kavanaugh, Judge Kavanaugh then, now Justice Kavanaugh. She was nasty to a level that was just a horrible thing, the way she treated now Justice Kavanaugh. And I won't forget that soon.
And in case nasty doesn't ring a bell, let me remind you where you might remember it from.
Of my commitment to raise taxes on the wealthy. My Social Security payroll contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund by making sure that we have sufficient.
And here's the thing, as vile as these attacks are, they're wholly unsurprising, considering this is all Trump has. He only knows how to be racist and misogynistic and xenophobic and homophobic because the only way that he and Republicans win elections are by ensuring that people are divided and scared of each other. As long as Americans are worried about immigrants and black people and ambitious women and the LGBT community, then they won't realize that the real people screwing everyone equally are Republicans. Republicans are why we've lost over 165,000 Americans to the pandemic. They're why we have no relief bill, why states have no funding, why unemployment benefits weren't extended, and why no evictions bill was passed. Republicans are why millions of Americans are without health care. Republicans are why we're woefully unprepared for climate change. Republicans are why corrupt police officers aren't being held accountable. Republicans are why women don't even have agency over their own bodies everywhere in this country. The GOP's agenda flies in the face of what Americans want, and they know that, which is why they're hell-bent on turning everyone against each other, because their political survival depends on keeping everyone distracted. So ignore the birtherism, ignore the racism, ignore the misogyny and homophobia and xenophobia, because its offensiveness is only matched by its predictability. And what might have worked in 2012 and 2016 is not going to work anymore. And don't forget to listen to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I'll take a deep dive into the biggest issues of the week and interview major players in the world of politics, like Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Beto O'Rourke, Eric Swalwell, Katie Porter, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Breaking news, President Trump doubling down on his opposition to giving $25 billion in needed funding to the U.S. Postal Service in order to block expanded mail-in voting for November's election because he believes it will benefit Democrats.
We need that money in order to make the post office work so it can take all these millions and millions of ballots. And you said that would be fraudulent. So it sounded like you said you're blocking.
No, I said it will end up being fraudulent because if you look at what's happened over the last few weeks, just look at the few instances where this has happened, it's turned out to be fraudulent. We have to have an honest election. And if it's not going to be an honest election, I guess people have to sit down and think really long and hard about it.
This, as a federal judge, gives the Trump campaign 1 day to produce any evidence of vote-by-mail fraud in Pennsylvania, something the Trump campaign claims exists. Kristen Holmes is out front.
President Trump admitting he's opposed to funding for the Postal Service for political reasons.
They want $3.5 billion for something that'll turn out to be fraudulent. That's election money, basically. Now, they need that money in order to have the post office work so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. Those two items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting because they're not equipped to have it.
Fueling outrage over the Trump administration's attempts to use the Postal Service to meddle in the election.
Pure Trump.
Okay, guys, let's go. Let's go. Come on.
He doesn't want an election.
With more people than ever expected to vote by mail in an election held in the middle of a pandemic, President Trump has spent months making false claims about widespread fraud.
This is a thing that will be a disaster like never before.
Meanwhile, both Democrats and Republicans raising concerns over changes made to the agency by the new Postmaster General, a Trump fundraiser and ally, including major shakeups in leadership and cost cuts that some workers say have slowed delivery.
Now is not the time to be cutting back services.
All this as postal workers across the country are sounding alarms this week over the removal of hundreds of mail processing machines from postal facilities. Documents obtained by CNN outline the plan to remove nearly 700 machines used for organizing letters and other mail. While a spokesperson for the service describes the removal as a cost-saving measure, postal union leaders warn that something like this just months before the election could cause delays. In a statement, the Postal Service saying it, quote, routinely moves equipment around its network as necessary to match changing mail and package volumes.
I don't understand why they were taken out. I heard someone report that they might have been taken out to use for spare parts. It made little sense to me.
And new revelations over the Postal Service's urging that states use more expensive first-class mail to make sure the ballots are prioritized or risk that voters will not receive their ballots in time to return them by mail. The influx of mail-in voting causing some states, already financially unstable during a pandemic, to balk at the cost. Now, Democrats are asking for a new USPS Inspector General investigation, this time to look into Postmaster General Louis DeJoy's finances. New financial disclosures obtained by CNN show DeJoy apparently did not divest millions in stock from his former company, a current Postal Service contractor, and that DeJoy holds stock options in a major USPS customer, Amazon. The Postal Service says he has followed all of the ethics requirements. And Aaron, just to recap here, on one hand, you have a president who is openly undermining the system, and on the other, you have Democratic and Republican lawmakers, you have Postal Service workers, you have state officials who are all sounding alarms, not just about the administration's actions, but about the state of the Postal Service. And we are just months from a critical election in which the Postal Service will have utmost importance. And we are talking about election integrity here, and it's just not clear if this will be able to be sorted out before November, before people really need to have it sorted out so we can get those election results.
All right, thank you very much, Kristen. And out front now, the Colorado Secretary of State, Jena Griswold, who is a Democrat. And Secretary Griswold, I appreciate your time. So after President Trump made his comments this morning, you tweeted, this is voter suppression, plain and simple. Tell me why.
Well, hi, Aaron. Thank you for having me on. And this is just such an important conversation. So thank you for covering it. The president clearly stated that he's trying to defund the post office to stop mail ballots. And it's voter suppression because mail ballots are the best way to vote during a pandemic. So to force Americans into the choice of risking their lives to cast a ballot is a measure to decrease turnout in November. We should all be very alarmed at where the president is going.
Okay, so when you say that, the president, he was confronted with the point you're making at that press conference, and he says, no, he wants people to vote. He's not trying to suppress anybody. Here's how he answered the question.
I'm not saying anything wrong with voting. I want them to vote. But that would mean that they'd have to go to a voting booth like they used to and vote.
Even if they don't feel safe voting in person, people want to vote by mail because...
Well, they're going to have to feel safe, and they will be safe, and we will make sure that they're safe. And we're not going to have to spend $3.5 billion to do it.
What do you say to the president, Secretary Griswold?
Well, I would say to him and with all your viewers that my mom is a nurse and she's been saving people's lives on a COVID unit. And vote by mail is like wearing a mask. It's the way that we can save Americans' lives. And the fact of the matter is that Americans shouldn't have to choose between risking their very life and casting a ballot. And we just have to look towards Wisconsin's election. Milwaukee alone, 180 polling centers were reduced to 5 because of fears over COVID-18. So it's just not realistic to say that every American should go to a polling center. And also, I just think it is so reprehensible that the president is willing to risk American lives to try to shift the power in this election.
So President Trump has, as you know, made a point of saying mail-in ballots are not going to be accurate. There's going to be corruption. There's going to be a fraud, right? Again and again and again. Here he is.
Voting by mail is wrought with fraud and abuse, and people don't get their ballots.
When you do all mail-in voting ballots, you're asking for fraud. People steal them out of mailboxes. People print them, and then they sign them, and they give them in.
These mail-in ballots where they send millions of them all over the country, it's going to be a rigged election.
All right. So every voter in your state is sent a ballot by mail. Have you seen anything at all that would back up any concern about mail-in ballots being rigged, being corrupt?
President Trump is lying about vote by mail. He is lying about mail ballots. Colorado has a very clean history of running great elections with vote by mail. And we have safeguards in place to make sure that we would catch any type of double voting, including signature verification, rules about ballot collection, and a lot of other safeguards. But what is true is that there's over 160 Americans who have died from COVID-19. It's thousands of times more likely for an American to pass away because of the coronavirus than any type of fraud. And I think the president would do himself and the nation a lot of benefit by focusing on the crisis at hand, that's COVID-19, and leave it to me and folks who actually understand elections to make sure that we're setting up the election in the right way during a pandemic.
So what do you do then if
Uh-huh.
the USPS does not get the funding, right? If he blocks that funding, then what do you do? I mean, does that then put the sanctity of the election in question if it doesn't get that funding?
Well, Colorado's election model has built-in contingencies. So, for example, we send out ballots 3 weeks before the election day, and there's hundreds of mail ballot drop boxes across the state. And the majority of Coloradans, about 75%, actually take their mail ballot to a drop box. So one of the things that I've been doing is increasing the number of drop boxes. We added 91 last year, and then I announced funding for an additional 100 this year. So those are some of the measures that states can do. But I will tell you, the president is going to all lengths to try to suppress the vote. The RNC is suing in Pennsylvania about drop boxes. It doesn't matter what you do. They are coming with a lawsuit and lies to try to suppress turnout in November.
All right, Secretary Gina Griswold, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I decided that at the end of every show for the next year, I would share excerpts from a book that I believe would enhance your life and make you a stronger thinker and problem solver. All characteristics that will help you win at life and raise stronger and healthy children. Many of you turn your nose up at reading, or you snub the advice that you must read in life to succeed, or you compare the cost of a book to getting a new pair of shoes or getting your hair done or your nails done. The reason why you make these cost comparisons is because you do not truly value a book. A book is a magnificent instrument that can change the course of your life and the lives of your children. In later shows, I plan to discuss with you how a book changed the lives of certain people. I understand that you do not earn a lot of money, and this money is valuable to you because of all the things you see advertised that you desire, and you do not want to spend a lot of money on a book. A new pair of shoes is more valuable to you than a book. If you truly cannot afford a book, then you need to go to the library and take your children with you for a day of reading. You must gird your loins and proceed at educating yourself. Some of you seem to think that having a conversation with your stupid girlfriend or your stupid boyfriend will help you more than reading a book, when actually having a conversation with your loudmouth girlfriend or loudmouth boyfriend is merely a cathartic, allowing you to blow off steam and proclaim how life has been so unfair to you. What you do not realize is that the advice coming from your do-nothing girlfriend or your do-nothing boyfriend is advice coming from a fool. Your do-nothing girlfriend is a sexual opportunist looking for a man she can impress with her body. When her vagina fails her, what will your girlfriend do but go to work at McDonald's or Wendy's at the age of 60 and continue to spread her ignorance at church? Her daughter will be on the street and her son in prison. She will never realize that her life is the result of the decision she made not to educate herself through reading. All her life she felt that she had something better to do than reading. She had something better to do than reading with her children. She had something better to do than working with her children. And that was going to the bar, trying to entertain a man, or trying to find some man that would buy her a pair of shoes. A man spending money on her was more important than educating herself. In later shows, I'm going to spend a great deal of time giving you some examples of fools. These are people who think they are smart, willing to trade their body and integrity for a dollar bill. These people end up in the cemetery after lamenting each and every day of their lives about their unfulfilled dreams. Do not be upset by the use of the word fool. You tell me if a woman is not a fool to instruct her grandson to kill her husband for a $25,000 life insurance. Let that sink in for a moment. Instead of instructing her grandson to make something of his life, the grandmother instructs her grandson to become a murderer, to kill his grandfather. I have this anecdotal advice for you about reading. Listen to this short true story. A friend and I were talking. She said a woman she knew called her and sought to renew their friendship. During their conversation, the woman told my friend that President Trump had done so much for black people, and that's why she voted for him in 2016, and she was going to vote for him again in the upcoming election. My friend asked her a question. She said, "Tell me some of the things that Trump has done for black people." The woman said, "A whole lot." My friend persisted and asked her to name one thing that Trump had done for black people. The woman could not. The woman kept using the phrase, "a whole lot of things." My friend said after a while she stopped talking. Finally, the conversation was over and my friend hung up. My friend said, as she hung up, she made up her mind right then that she would never renew her friendship with this woman. Now ask yourself why. Why would she not renew her friendship with this woman? You can answer this question in 2 words. The woman was a poor thinker. She never investigated anything that was told to her. Whether you know it or not, a person who is a poor thinker, who does not examine his or her thinking, is a very dangerous person indeed. Think about it. Today we are going to discuss the book series, Women of Courage. The book series comes in 3 parts. It's part 1, part 2, and then a workbook designed to help you develop yourself. I believe this book will help a lot of women determine the course of their lives. Enjoy reading.
Modern history is written on the back of women who chose not to conform. Our history books are littered with examples of powerful women like Rosa Parks, Malala Yousafzai, and the Triangle Shirtwaist factory workers. But for every tale of a woman's success and perseverance, there is a harrowing backstory of tribulation and strife. Things are better now, we say. It's not like it used to be. But turn on the news. Turn on the news in your own city. Turn on the international news. Women are suffering from the restrictive society in Saudi Arabia to your own neighborhood. It's better, but ask yourself, is it good enough? Women of Courage tells a tale of women, from the harrowing story of early women to their victorious perseverance. It tells tales that have not been told enough, examples of how women have the strength to put their foot down and map their own future. Read their stories and become better equipped to write your own story by changing your behavior and becoming a woman of courage. The Women of Courage series was written to help women learn about themselves and to turn women into winners. You do not have to settle for life prophesized by your teachers, the church, your parents, or your friends. You can change the scenarios and play the starring role. In order for women to learn to believe in themselves, to become the person they want to be, it is important for women to know where they came from. History is the standard by which we judge ourselves. If you have a good self-image, you will believe the sky is the limit. You can do anything or become anyone. But if you have a poor self-image, your thinking will be chaotic and you may never reach your goal. For centuries, women have played an important role in the development of society, yet this role has been practically ignored in folklore and in history books. Men have always had the starring role. Men have been the keepers of faith. Men have been the saviors of society. Men have been valiant, steadfast, and true, while women have been relegated to the sidelines where the peace setters were men. Today we shall put the story straight. The everyday slugfest that was carried on by ordinary women for century after century after century has never been told. Today we present a pictorial representation to give you another view of the fight conducted by women. Pay particular attention to the conditions in which the women worked and note this was a fight for survival. Why are only a few women in history books? Why are women left out of leadership positions? Why are 21st century women struggling with the same issues that 20th century women fought against? The series Women of Courage gives answers to these questions. Millions of women all over the world are living in fear, unhappy, and unfulfilled, wishing they could do more with their lives. If you are one of these women, fearful and unhappy, take the bold step and purchase the series Women of Courage. Read and learn how other women met these challenges and succeed in living fulfilling lives. Read the series Women of Courage and learn how you can change your life forever. Women of Courage is an inspirational book that seeks to tell the stories of strong women who have persevered, even when those threatened by a woman's strength have stood in the way. It's a book for all women, a book to help more of us stand up and say, it's about time. It's a book for you. Get your copy from touchedbythelight.us. If you have reached a point where you are stuck, having a sense of tiredness, coming from seeing all of your dreams and visions of success get obscured with the lack of experience, guidance, and knowledge necessary for success, learning from Women of Courage may be the most important thing you've read this year. Living a passionate life in a hectic and busy 21st century is getting increasingly harder. Women of Courage series will provide you with all the inspiration, courage, and role model you need to get inspired and take your life in your hands and start living as bravely, as passionate as you deserve. Most aspiring individuals end up missing a huge amount of opportunities due to the lack of training and tools that would allow you to overcome psychological barriers, limiting beliefs, fears, and lack of creativity that you could potentially face during your journey as a successful woman. This lack of proper guidance manifests itself in lowered performance and productivity and failure to unleash your full potential and show the world what you can truly do. If you lack the attitude and psychology, proper resources, or vision to make your dreams a reality, combined with dissatisfaction with the execution of your plans, but you remain firmly dedicated to making your ambitions a reality, you will certainly derive the most benefit from the incredible Women of Courage series. If you are serious about taking your life to a whole new level and enjoying the privileges of creativity, fearlessness, and success that all the brave women who have changed the world are equipped with, you are in the right place. Don't leave your future to chance. Get a new sense of strength, inspiration, and courage with Women of Courage series. You'll be so glad you did. Guaranteed. Achieve what you're after.
Hello?
Привет, моя куколка.
Now we know that in the year since Donald Trump's White House first learned that Russia is paying bounties to Taliban fighters to kill American troops in Afghanistan, Donald Trump has spoken directly with Vladimir Putin 8 times. 8 times he could have stood up for our troops and demand that Russia stop. And when asked directly,
You had a phone call with Vladimir Putin on July 23rd. Did you bring up this issue?
No, that was a phone call to discuss other things.
And you've never discussed it with him?
Donald Trump admits his traitorous truth.
I have never discussed it with him.
Our troops deserve a whole lot better than a traitor like Trump.
Привет, моя куколка.
Join us at the Women of Courage show every Friday from 3 to 4 p.m. and every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. for information that will change your life.